Hi, this is the video for Module 5, and I'm going to rely a little bit more on my notes. There's a lot for this module, so I want to make sure that I hit all the points and I don't make this a 25-minute video. So, with that said, Chapter 5 of Spring, you're going to read Chapter 5, and Chapter 5 is I think it's called The Common School and the Threat of Cultural Pluralism. So what happens to the common school? The common school ideology when you've got a bunch of different kinds of people and different kinds of people who don't necessarily accept other kinds of people, these types of things. Ultimately, segregated schooling. In the United States at this time, the predominant ruling culture is the Anglo-Saxon, work ethic, basic culture, I guess is what you would say. So what do you do when you have other religions? You've got a Jewish minority in New York. You've got an Irish minority in New York who are going to break away and form their own schools. In the South, of course, African Americans are kept from, it's actually against the law to educate slaves. But in the North, there are northern free blacks, and their schooling is pretty much kept segregated. And some of the first separate but equal laws actually happen during this time. You've also got Native Americans, who are being segregated into their own schools. So what happens to that ideal of the common school, of putting everybody on the same playing field, of having equal opportunity to compete after after they get out of school? So, there's some interesting perspectives in Spring in Chapter 5 based on that history. So I created a PowerPoint to kind of pull out some of the important points from that, and in the PowerPoint I gave you some supplemental information via some little snippets, some little videos. So be sure when you're in that particular PowerPoint that you download the PowerPoint. I suggest you do that for most of them anyway. Download the PowerPoint, and that way you can watch it in slideshow mode, because if you don't watch it in slideshow mode, you won't get to have the links to the nice little videos that I've sort of embedded in some of the pictures. So always click on the pictures and they'll take you to a nice little video or snippet of something that relates to whatever we're talking about for that particular slide. So you're going to watch that. At the end of that particular PowerPoint will be what your journal assignment is for this particular module. And that is, you're going to create a quilt piece. Now this is, I like to bring in sometimes activities that, I've used in my classroom when I was a public school teacher, and I like to show you how it can be adapted to be used at the college level. It can be adapted to be used, at just about any level. So I'm going to actually have you do this particular activity. I used it in social studies, so this kind of makes sense. But you could use it certainly in anything. I think the idea comes from language arts, and I think I got it when I was a language arts teacher first. But it could be adapted to certainly any particular subject, I'm sure, if you're creative about it. But you're going to create a quilt piece. You'll see what I'm talking about when you watch the PowerPoint. And you're going to turn that particular quilt piece in as your journal, and with a summary as your journal entry for this week. And when I do this in my face-to-face class, it's a little more substantive in the sense that you can actually see it when it's finished. But I have one that I've saved. It's in the back here. You're probably not going to be able to see this very well, but this is one that's saved from, I think, last semester. And it's just a nice way to then show the work that everybody's been working on, and people can go review it. But anyway, you're going to do this activity as your journal number 3. Then you're going to watch a movie. It's by PBS, or a Nova documentary, and it's called Judgment Day: Intelligent Design on Trial. And this is one example. It's one free link we have to a movie that explains how teachers are caught in the crossfire between a lot of religious beliefs, a lot of ideological beliefs, and so forth. And I think it's important to understand as a teacher that you're going to be caught in these, in this whirlwind every so often, and it's not just in social studies, it's not just in science. It can be in a lot of different subjects. I remember one year I was teaching eighth grade science. It was earth science. And we had an astronomy unit. And part of the astronomy unit required us to talk about the Big Bang Theory. And, we started talking about that. Or you talk about the Cretaceous period and all the different eras of, scientific history. And, I actually had a parent write a note one year that said that she didn't want her child to be learning about that because it conflicted with her religious beliefs. So I had to go to my administration. How do I hold that child accountable for standards and curriculum that she's going to be tested on when her mom doesn't want her to learn that particular information? So, we worked something out. I don't really remember. I think she had an alternative assignment. But again, you're going to be caught. If you become a teacher, for those of you becoming a teacher, just understand that you're caught in the middle of a lot of this sometimes. And it's, it's going to require some creativity on your part and some empathy and sympathy for other opinions and other points of view when you're confronted with these things. So you're going to watch this movie. And I created a PowerPoint summing up, some of this as well, to give you a little bit of history of some of the judgments that have, the legal judgments that have happened related to this particular topic. And I think your discussion is also going to be tied to this particular movie. The movie is about 2 hours long, so make sure you plan for that when you sit down to watch it. But it is very interesting, and I think that again, I want you to keep in mind that there are always going to be controversial issues, and how should you deal with them or address them as a public school teacher or just as a teacher in general, because you will be required. It's a lot of the times it's not what you believe or what you want to do, it's what your administration wants you to do. Okay, so then let's see, what are you going to do then? You've read Ravitch. You're going to read Ravitch of chapter 3 and Darling Hammond chapter 3. And okay, so Ravitch touches on the transformation of District 2. And I think that the big important overall, idea about this particular chapter is, does a one-size-fits-all education work for everybody? We want to standardize. We want to, make sure that everybody has the same opportunities and the same education. But does the same education mean all the same subjects, all the same topics, down to the same lessons, to the same amount of time spent on the lessons? There are school districts who are so concerned with their test scores that they've started scripting lessons for their teachers. So literally their teachers need to know exactly where they are every minute of the day. I mean, almost literally. So, these are just things to keep in mind. And just as a sort of foreshadowing, we're going to get to hear Darling Hammond's take on District 2. This comes up in her book later on. So you'll be able to see her version or her ideas about this. So she shows that we must take pause and question the idea that there is a miracle formula that will make all schools and districts successful. And she shows how this example affected many experts and how they jump on these bandwagons. And also how statistics, unless examined wisely, can hide important truths and facts. And, again, looking at the statistics and looking at, all of the different possibilities that could, be the cause for these things. Darling Hammond's chapter 3, she talks about how testing is narrowing and expanding the opportunity gap, unfortunately, which is the opposite of, obviously, of what the desired effect. So when testing is used as high stakes for students, teachers, and districts, what can happen? And, the gaming of the system, the cheating scandals, the narrowing of the curriculum, the teaching to the test, all of these things that I've noticed just in your discussions you're very aware of already. I mean, you've lived through a lot of this just as a student yourself. And then instead of using tests as one of the many important tools to evaluate and improve schools and learning, what are the alternatives? And testing without investing, meaning if you require all students to meet certain standards or certain levels, in the testing world, and you don't give them the resources in order to reach those testing levels, it's really not fair. She brings up some really important points there that I think, many of us don't necessarily, well, certainly a lot of politicians don't think about. And then, the problems with social promotion, with accountability, with punishing students in schools, creating standards without giving resources to help, which is what I've already sort of talked about. So those are all some really important stuff in Darling Hammond chapter 3 and in Ravage chapter 3. So I guess that's it for, well, that's it. That's a lot actually for module 5, but it's an important module. It's important information here. So go ahead and do the discussion post and do your journal assignment. And if you have any questions, let me know, and I'd be happy to help.